Uh, Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih atas waktunya untuk hadir di dalam webinar Korn Ferry Indonesia dengan tema Future of Rewards in Indonesia, Understanding Future of Work through Reward and Talent Management. Pada pagi hari ini, saya akan menyampaikan beberapa housekeeping rules. Yang pertama adalah bahwa secara sistem, semua audio maupun video dari Bapak Ibu kami nonaktifkan untuk menjaga kelancaran sesi. Jika Bapak Ibu memiliki pertanyaan yang ingin diajukan kepada para panelis kita pagi ini, kami persilahkan menggunakan fasilitas Q&A untuk memastikan bahwa semua pertanyaan yang Bapak Ibu sampaikan bisa tercatat di dalam sistem kami. Yang ketiga, perlu kami sampaikan bahwa sesi ini akan direkam dan nantinya Bapak Ibu bisa melihat kembali tayangan sesi kita pagi ini di dalam akun YouTube Korn Ferry Indonesia. Lalu juga dari segi materi presentasi nantinya akan kami bagikan kepada para peserta yang hadir di dalam sesi pagi ini melalui email masing-masing. Dan yang terakhir, kami harap Bapak Ibu bisa bersama kami di dalam kurang lebih 1 jam ke depan. Di dalam sesi ini perlu kami sampaikan akan ada beberapa aktivitas yang membutuhkan partisipasi dari Bapak Ibu sekalian berupa polling. Nanti di saat polling muncul, kami harap Bapak Ibu bisa ikut berpartisipasi untuk mengisi polling tersebut. Baik, saya akan memperkenalkan 3 panelis kita pagi ini. Yang pertama kita punya Halim Ariff. Beliau adalah Country Head Digital Korn Ferry Indonesia. Lalu kita punya pembicara kedua, Ibu Kartika Rizki. Beliau adalah Associate Principal dari Advisory Business di Korn Ferry Indonesia. Dan panelis ketiga hari ini adalah Tessa Artella. Beliau adalah Service Delivery Lead untuk RPO Business di Korn Ferry Indonesia. Baik, sekarang untuk memulai, we will ask Halim to start the session. Over to you, Halim.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Producer. That's a nice introduction. This is the agenda for today. I'm coming live from Kuala Lumpur. I think if you listen to how I speak, you know that I'm not Indonesian. So this is what we're going to cover today. I'm going to give you, to those who are not very familiar with Korn Ferry, a little bit ourselves. And then when it comes to the sharing of our rewards information, we'll go very high at the global level, and then we deep dive from regional. And then later we dissect a little bit more on pay trends and market, Indonesian market insights, what's going on, our point of view, and what we think that we can help with our clients. There's a little bit of twist in this. Other than looking at rewards entirely for the whole entire 1 hour, we also have expanded to look some kind of a trend if we want to go for, if we want to look at, the hiring trends, what are the things that the in thing right now when it comes to assessment to ensure that the rewards and the people that we get actually synchronize, right? So let's introduce Korn Ferry a little bit as a whole. All in all, Korn Ferry is a world-renowned management consulting firm with area of focus in talent and organization. That's what we do best. With 40 years history, we come forward with our rich experience in this area. And if you look at the slides, we pretty much cover end-to-end, from organization to assessment, talent acquisitions, reward and benefits, leadership development, and anchoring all the solutions would be our digital platform. That's where I'm from. We have KF Listen that looks at engagement survey, KF Assess and Select that looks at selection criteria and how we can do this twice as fast from everyone else. KF Recruit in our database, KF Pay and KF Perform. So that's all how we serve our clients. And if you look at our next page, this is something that we're very, very proud of. As for now, if anywhere you go, if by chance you go anywhere, we will be there. We have, from a database point of view, we have touched 150 countries with 25,000 companies that participate in our survey yearly, where we have 20 million, that's a huge number, 20 million data points of employees globally. So in Asia alone, we have 26 countries, 3,700 companies, and about 2.5 million employees in our database. Right? So let's go quickly into our global and regional outlook. This is kind of an interesting insight. Well, 2020 have been a year, not a very good year for everyone. So when you look at the growth at negative 1.6, and everybody kind of expect that. But if you look at those numbers, Indonesian market is not too shabby, it's not too bad. If we compare this with the global economic growth, it's declining at 5.2%. The regional have a bit higher. But if you look at this in a big way, there's an element of optimism in how we want to look at 2021 and 2022. If you see over here, the forecast growth is at 4.7, a lot higher than the global growth. Managing the inflation as with the global rate. So I think that the element of optimism over here is a lot. I think this is helped with vaccine is just around the corner. I think vaccine is also going to be produced in the country. So that kind of help that we will recover this as soon as possible. Some say that we'll recover this as early as February and March. So I think that's a very good sign, and how we want to look forward for 2021 and 2022. Right? So that's good. The level of optimism. So if you look at the global scenario in the next page, this is also kind of interesting. So Indonesia is not the only country that have that kind of optimism. People are optimistic in many ways. But if you look at Asia, when they say planning, there's plan to have some salary movement. In Africa, 90% of them actually saying that we will make a salary adjustment or salary increment. Some countries are higher than others. Some countries have bigger quantum than others. But in general, we can see over here, regardless of where you are sitting in the world, there's an element of optimism over here. So the faster we get out of this, the faster we get our life back to normal, right? Then we look at it. This is just sharing with you salary-based trends in 2020. 5.9, you look at the one in red. So 5.9 is the nominal, which is inclusive of inflation. The one in the blue line, that's the actual increase after we take out inflation. So it's not too bad. But what we want to know is, this is data in the past. People get increments in January 2020 or February 2020. But if we go to the next page, right? We go to the next page. This is where we deep dive to Indonesia a lot more. So 2020 5.9, yes, that's the actual base salary increment. So we are going forward with a cautious optimism. So, 70% of you guys say that we will give an increment, but at a bit more, realistic number of 3.5 salary increments, right? So that's good. If you reflect this with the Asian stats, for in Asia, that's an 87% up, forecasting that they will give an increment. And at the Asia level, it's actually at 4.5. So it's slightly less, but there is, that's what I say is people are very optimistic, but very cautious of how they want to move to 2021, right? That's still good news. So if you look at the chart over here, right, you can see that this is quite an interesting observation. You can see that the salary movement, from 2021 is just like tapering down. The highest is 11.3. And then the GDP is around 0.5, that's kind of flat. That, to me, is coming from the outside. If you look at this, there's some indication of trends that organization in Indonesia is actually managing costs from a salary angle. So you see the GDP is kind of flat around 5, but the line for the salary movement is actually going down. So that's an indication where people are being realistic or managing costs from a pay angle. We don't have the slide over here, but historically, if you look at how people pay in Indonesia, it's kind of interesting. If we can pull back to 2020, year 2000, up until year 2010, the scenario over here will be a lot different, right? So there will be going ups and down when it comes to the GDP, and then the salary movement will actually become flat. So what it means is, regardless of how the economy goes up and down, the salary movement will actually become flat. But the scenario have changed a lot after that. The salary movement kind of mimic how the GDP looks like. So from a company angle, that's kind of a good news, right? But from an employee, I think there's a level of maturity over here and how we want to manage the expectation of the employee, right? So let's stop here for a while and do a quick poll when it comes to the salary increment. I'm also very curious to see how our participants today, I see some familiar faces in there. What would be the salary increase that you have experienced personally in 2020? So let's see how the poll works over here. So one is no increase at all, 20 to 20 in early year 2000. Some of you get maybe 1 to 2%, the other one 3 to 4%, and then I'm very sure there will be some of you would actually get more than that. So, see where he stops. All right, it stops. That's it. Oh, there's more. All right, I think they're kind of stable. So the rest of the participants, or in those people who are listening to this webinar, a good 40% actually do not have any salary increase. So later, I'm sharing you some slides. Probably there's some element of cash preservation that happens in the countries that you serve. Some at 3.4%. This is an interesting observation. So although the actual base salary increase is around 5.9 based on our, but on the ground it's around 3.4. 3 to 4%. That's a majority, about 29% over there. Nearly 40% do not get any salary increase. The good news is, we probably want to know who are those guys getting more than 6%, which is a lot higher than what the base salary increase in 2020. Thank you. right? So moving on, that's an interesting insight. Moving on to the next page. Well, this is about bonus. We talked about the salary increments just now. Now we talk about the salary increase. As you can see, the bonus payout since 2011, it hovers plus and minus around 3%. But when it comes to year 2020 and 2021, there you can see that kind of diving down. The actual variable bonus payout in 2020 is around 2.2 months. The forecast is actually at a lower 1.4. But the good news is 90% of the organization that we are planning to pay bonus payout in 2021. Before I do the poll, just to highlight some interesting observation. If I look at the variable bonus payout, this is on average 3 months in Indonesia. I think that's a magic number that we look for. At least psychologically, that people want to have 3 months bonus. The number in Malaysia where from, that's a 2-month number. So that's a different number of expectation, minimum or just right for bonus payout. But interestingly, for 2020, the actual one is actually 2.2. So if you look at how people pay bonus, usually they pay bonus around January or February. So I think if you look at this, we started lockdown somewhere in March, April, but the COVID-19 situation actually happened somewhere around late November, December. That's where there's the peak in China. I think a lot of other countries globally, I think they see this coming, and the writings are on the wall. They know that it's coming because typically bonus being paid out as a reflection of performance of the previous year. So now they are cutting the total number of payouts. I think there's a good chance of people doing this or organizations doing this as a cash preservation, just to make sure that they have enough cash or enough cash flow to run during this crisis. So I think that's the payout why it's dipped at 2.2. Again, with the same sentiments on as the salary increase, the projection for 2021, it's a safe number of 1.4. I think that's kind of a fair considering all the things that we are experiencing in 2020. Top 3 sectors paying high bonus for 2020 would be the mining around 2.9, natural resources 2.6, and utilities around 2.62. All right. So let's see what we actually get for our bonus in 2020. So the producer kind enough to run a poll in this. So maybe we can see what is your actual bonus payout in 2020. Right, 1.6 to 2 months, 2 months more over, no bonus payout. All right, interesting. So that's wait. So if we do the survey over here, nearly like 1/3 do not have any bonus payout. So I think people are being conservative over here, is trying to go and go through 2020 with making sure that they have enough cash to move through the pandemic. But another quarter between 1.1 to 1.5, there are a small portion that's actually more than 2 months, right? So this data is very different than the actual variable bonus payout that we have in our survey. This is interesting because that's on the average, but now as we go right to the individual, the sentiment is slightly different, right? Next one. One of the analytics that we looked as we do the survey is actually to look into the remuneration mix. This is where the total reward philosophy comes in. So we have a different segments over here, from senior executives all the way down to clerical operations. If you're familiar with Korn Ferry pay reference levels, 21 is the senior management, 17, 20 in the middle, executive 12 to 16. Or manager, then anything lower than that would be on the operation side. 60-70 is a psychological mix in my point of view. So if you look at this, you can see that when it comes to the executive and senior management, there's a bigger portion in terms of the bonus payout. And then we look at the extreme end of the clerical. So it's a kind of 3 months times more from, if you compare this from the clerical. This scenario is not good or bad, but I think if you make a reference and compare it with a lot of emerging markets, you would see an exact replica of this with a lot of emerging markets. So that the stretch over the variable portion of the variable bonus is around 30%, right? If you go to a more mature market, you will see that the number of the variables which actually be a lot bigger. Some goes around 50-50, but the more, more or less that you can see everywhere else is around like 60-40. So there's a bigger chunk of the variable sitting on the variable short-term payment in the remuneration mix, right? And then if you look at the top 5 benefits prevalence, where we see a lot more companies that have this, not much different from year to year. Top of the list is still healthcare, life insurance, company car, annual leave, additional annual leave, transportation and commuting assistance. It's not that much different as we see in the previous year. So those are the top 5 benefits prevalence. One thing which I like to know is, if I'm going to draw a poll over here, and the producer, can we run the poll? What I'd like to know, if you have the opportunity to in your organization to rebalance the remuneration mix. So if you look at this, how would you want to do this? It's slowing down the base salary increase, and then increasing the proportion of the annual bonus incentive. So there's actually a larger pool for bonus, or optimizing the benefits cost, either make it bigger or smaller, considering long-term incentive, or you think that we should do all the above, right? Oh, okay. So we have a fight between slowing down base salary increase. Nearly 60% of that is voting for this. Because this is your opinion. How would you rebalance the remuneration mix? Okay, cool. And I was expecting, if you look at it from 2 angles, one is from the company's angle. If you're looking at it from the employee's angle, the answer would be slightly different. But I think you're pretty much doing from the lens of the employee angle over here, which actually slowing down the base salary increase. That means there's an intent. Probably we make it the cash portion slightly lesser, and it increase the proportion of other areas, like say bonus and everything, right? So that's an interesting insight. How we do this is a different story altogether. Our Korn Ferry colleagues who are more than happy to help you out to bounce ideas and how we can get this thing on track slowing down the salary increase and looking at all the other things. Long-term incentive is something to talk about actually, because not many companies in the emerging market actually, they have this in mind, but going into that part of they really embark on the long-term incentive, they are very cautious in how they want to do this, because there's a lot of things at stake over here, right? Yeah, that's an interesting insight. Let's move on with some other insights. I think the next page where we have asked these questions, right? The labor market sentiments. We are top 3. What are the jobs most difficult to hire? What are jobs most easiest to hire? The top 3 difficult to hire: engineering jobs, IT jobs, production, and then at the bottom, easiest to hire. I think because all these roles can go from one industry to the other, so it's quite easily. Admin, support, HR, and the other one would be sales, right? A lot of times, when it comes to difficult to hire, there are certain issues around this. But what I want to touch also would be the employee turnover. There are sentiments that in 2020, there's a lot of companies that do the voluntary separation and everything. But when you look at the actual numbers, it's actually from our survey, it's not that much, simply because when we ask around why the number is controlled, Indonesia is a country where the labor law is very stringent on this. It's not easy to take people out of their jobs. But one thing that we also realize, that companies are taking a different approach in managing the pandemic, and when it comes to managing costs, what they do is it's not laying off people from their jobs, but managing the cost through like salary reduction or some kind of that fact. The salary may be lesser, but the job security will actually be there. So that's an interesting observation that we'll see. From the ground, we think that it's going to be a lot, but when we go down, actually, it's not as bad as we see, in the social media and all. All right, there's a poll here again. The question that we need to ask you guys, based on your experience, which function is the most challenging to hire? Let's see whether we are in agreement with the research that we have over here. Yep, IT goes all the way up to 57%. That's kind of a tie with engineering and IT. This is kind of the same. All right. So that's kind of interesting. I think you guys are also experiencing like engineering and IT most challenging to hire, and then the rest of the jobs are a lot easier. There's a lot of good people out there. And if I can, before I pass this thing to my other colleagues to share their insights, there are a few things that I want to leave with you all to think. Next slide, Mr. Producer. Something to think about, right? One, when we look at the salary, it's always been increasing, year after year. How do you make sure that it is actually correlated with the competencies of the employees? So we want to have that the salary is increasing, but the competency is kind of stagnant before. So a lot of CEOs that I asked said he doesn't mind paying those kind of money, just making sure that the money that I pay is actually worth it. So that's one question that a lot in the top executive mind. So in the future, another points to ponder, in the future, how companies could ensure variable bonus payout is actually commensurate with the performance, right? So we have the 3 months, it's kind of a psychological number, but how we balance this with performance. Lastly, another point to ponder, if engineering, production, IT are jobs, the top 3 job families that are most difficult to hire, our companies are being pressured to hire at a higher salary. However, because of the pressure, they are having less scrutiny over competence and experience. So it's actually a market-driven, but not really talent capability kind of approach. I think with that note, it's a good jump to pass this to Tessa to look at from a higher perspective in how do we manage all this. Over to you, Tessa.
Hi, thanks very much. Thank you very much, Halim, for the very insightful presentation and on rewards, basically. So now let's move on to the next fun thing, how we are leveraging the insights that Halim just mentioned just now into the recruitment practice. Yeah. So if you can go to the next slide, Pandya. Yeah. Okay. So basically, a few years ago, Korn Ferry conducted a talent study, for regarding to the talent supply and demand for 20 developed and developing economies. So interestingly, by 2030, right, we expect literally every country in the global study except India to experience a talent deficit. While for Indonesia itself, we are expecting a labor skill shortage of almost 18 million. And the main reason on this one is because, as you know, Indonesia, or we are actually struggling with a mismatch between the young people's skills. What are the skills that are available in the market right now, and what the industry really needs, right? So this is very alarming, but in a positive note, we still actually every one of us actually still have time to actually prepare our organization to prepare on the labor shortage for the next 10 years. Yeah. So if we can go to the next step, next slide, sorry, and yeah. Yeah. So as also mentioned by Halim earlier, there are around 45% of companies that indicates that it is even harder to find qualified candidates right now. So if you can see the table in the right hand side, you can see that this is the top 10 business issues that are impacting your recruitment processes. I'm not going to go through one by one because again, anyway, we are going to share with you the deck later on. But from here, I just want to highlight three things. Yeah. So first is the new skills that is as you know, we have seen a really influx of tech startup companies for the past 3 to 5 years, right? And from here, there are also a lot of many new skills required or emerge, basically. And also, this is related to the digital transformation pointer as well, with the industry 4.0 or 5.0 even. We have heard a lot about data science, machine learning, AI, Python, and those kind of skills, right? And these skills definitely, they are not here, or basically we can say that they are pretty new, that just emerged like 3 to 5 years ago. The last thing that I would like to highlight here is, is the uncertain economic situations, especially during the pandemics, right? I think back in March when we just started, working from home, and basically we are all still gauging like, okay, how big is this pandemic going to be? We already heard like there are many companies that are doing layoff, right? And at that point, I hear, yeah, or maybe even for me as a recruiter, in a way, I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's going to be easier for companies to get to find candidates, right? Because if there are a lot of people that are being laid off, that means the supply is higher. So we can easier. It is going to be easier for us to get the candidates. But actually, it is not the case, and it's very surprising. After 9 months of this pandemic, it is even harder for companies to find this candidate. Why? Because many candidates who are actually employed, they are very, very reluctant to move, because definitely they will be thinking, okay, if I join a new company, then what's going to happen if I didn't pass the probation? It's going to be even harder for them to actually get a new job after that, right? Or what if they join and then within a week suddenly the company collapse or something, and then, or basically the financial condition is not stable and they got retrenched, right? So it's even harder to attract those candidates in. So I think related to the previous slides that I shared as well, things to really consider here is, does Indonesia talent market actually has the relevant skills needed, right? Is your company ready to embark in this new direction? So before we go to the next slide, we actually have a short poll here. Pandya, can you please help to run the poll? Yeah. So if you are a candidate, right, just want to check with all of you, what will be your top reason in choosing an organization for you to work in? Okay, we've seen benefits, job stability. Okay, benefit is still there. Okay, oh, this is interesting. Literally almost everything is there. Okay. Oh, benefit is still number one. Interesting. Okay. Okay, is there anything more? We just wait for a few more seconds. Yep, I think we can stop the poll and then we can share. Okay, so from here, we can see that number one, I mean, again, if you're a candidate, yeah, benefits package is still your number one priority, followed by job stability. And the next one is the company or brand reputation. This is very interesting. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide, Pan. Okay, so in this slide, you can really see the evolving priorities of the candidates when considering a companies, right? So in 2020, which is in the middle, what they are thinking, yes, the priority is basically company culture, career progression, and the next one is benefits package. Yeah, but if we are looking at all the 8 criterias here, and then we are looking from the span of 10 years from 2015 to 2020, I would like to highlight the movement, especially for the benefits package and the flexible working. Yeah, so looking back 5 years ago in 2015, benefits package is actually number one priority, right? It's very much aligned to what you guys have shared just now. Benefits is number one when you are considering to move. So it is mainly money game, if I can say. Yeah. However, if we see 5 years from now, which is in 2025, benefits package that is coming as a top one in 2015, 10 years after that, it actually goes down into number 6. So most of the candidates doesn't really think that benefits is the main pull factor or the main criteria for them to move. And the other thing, the other interesting thing is actually flexible working. So again, if we are looking at in 2015, flexible working is actually listed as the bottom two. So it's number 7 in candidates priority. However, you know, 5 years from now or 10 years from 2015, it actually jumped into number 1 priority, right? And this is really understandable considering, the current condition. Both companies and employees are actually forced to go outside our comfort zone with the work from home setup, something that we maybe never think of, right? And I still remember in March, I think, when we are going working from home, and then many people are actually saying, no, this is not going to work. This, and they have very challenging they have very challenging thoughts on how we can actually work this out. Yeah. So now with these top 3 priorities in mind, right, for 2025, flexible working, company culture, and a company mission, now it's actually time to question ourselves. Does your company or our company ready to attract a candidate with these 3 priorities in mind? Okay, so if we can go to the next slide, Pan. Yeah, so basically it's very hard to think of any aspect of the work life, that the COVID doesn't really touch, right? Like literally it touches us everywhere, not only professionally, but also personally. Between the job cuts and the quarantines, many workers' day-to-day lives have looks like nothing like, they did even 2 or 3 months ago, right? So what hasn't changed is basically the value that the leaders put in a certain skills. So just going to share with you briefly here. There's the learning agility, the active listening, emotional intelligence, and also intrinsic motivations. Yeah. So basically, from all these four, these four skills are basically the one that, I mean, during this pandemic time, employees who have these four skills will be the one who can actually survive and shine. Yeah. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So this is just this is actually the last slide. Um, really, pandemic again, it's really hitting everyone, right? And we really have no choice but to hit the brakes and basically stepping back and really think about what's going to happen in the future. Yeah. So what I want to highlight here is really whether a company actually succeeds post-COVID after this would really depend on, whether the company actually have the right people with the right skills and whether those people are actually aligned to the work that needs to be done. Yeah. So again, things to ponder to yourself is with the current talent crunch and the economic uncertainty, it is very crucial for every organization to be ready, not only to attract talent within. So from here, I would like to pass on to my colleague Kartika, who will be sharing in more in depth on how to assess and hire with impact.
Okay, thank you Tessa for the very insightful research. Ya, yang selanjutnya adalah mengenai hiring with impact gitu ya. Mengapa hiring saja tidak cukup, tetapi kita juga harus memastikan what kind of impact that we can give to the organization. Next slide-nya, Pandya. Ya, nah dari hasil research dari Harvard Business Review, mereka mengatakan bahwa perusahaan yang reputasinya saat ini masih belum terbangun gitu ya, mereka had to offer a 10% higher salary than their peers gitu ya. Ini mengakibatkan bahwa cost yang perlu dikeluarkan oleh organisasi itu menjadi jauh lebih besar daripada kompetitornya. Dan di sisi lain, di sebelah kanan kita melihat ada grafik employer value versus employer cost. Ini berkaitan juga dengan yang tadi Tessa sudah mention tentang talent crunch in Indonesia, especially in 2030 gitu ya, di mana kita akan menghadapi kompetisi yang jauh lebih challenging dalam attract talent atau dalam mendapatkan best candidate for our organization. Di mana kalau kita lihat di paling bawah kategori employed dan encourage, apa yang kita bisa berikan terhadap kandidat maupun terhadap internal employee adalah hal-hal yang sifatnya money gitu ya, baik itu fixed pay maupun variable pay. Tetapi seiring dengan meningkatnya skor employer value, yang kita bisa berikan kepada kandidat tidak lagi hal-hal yang sifatnya benefit, cash, atau money gitu ya, tetapi juga bagaimana tentang career progression-nya, bagaimana tentang personal development-nya. Nah, ini juga mengakibatkan impact terhadap HR atau terhadap organisasi, di mana kita harus mempersiapkan clarity terkait dengan career path, dan kita juga harus memiliki profile dari seluruh employee yang ada di organisasi untuk memastikan bahwa kita menempatkan orang tepat pada posisinya, dan juga kita memastikan bahwa setiap orang itu kita care terhadap development-nya. Nah, hal-hal demikian yang mengakibatkan kita semua perlu memikirkan gitu ya, what kind of talent that actually we need in the organization, dan apakah sekarang kapabilitas SDM itu sudah mumpuni terhadap talent yang kita sebenarnya butuhkan. Nah, next slide-nya.
Kartika,
Yes.
Ini ada request to speak in English if possible.
Oh, okay. Okay, since I'm not really comfortable to speak in English, so apologize that I will mix it in Bahasa. So at the first thing, we need to ensure that we have to identify what kind of talent that we need in the organization. We have to identify the success profile that we need in the organization. And after that, we have to assess our employee so that we have the data or information about the talent that we have. And after that, we have to make sure what kind of development program to close the gap. In Korn Ferry, we believe about the 4 dimensions that will impact the human performance in the workplace. So if you can click next, Mandya. we have competencies, experience, traits, and driver. So these 4 dimensions is actually directly impact to the human performance in the organization. The first one is competencies. Kayaknya semua perusahaan di Indonesia, I believe, already use assessment tools to assess competencies gitu ya. Jadi competencies is something related to skill and behavior that required for success in the future on in this current position. Kompetensi itu sifatnya kita bisa observe secara langsung dan kita juga bisa develop gitu ya dalam waktu yang cukup make sense gitu ya, bisa short term atau medium term atau long term. Dan yang kedua adalah experience. Experience ini we can gather from the previous assignment or roles that really fit with the future position or future roles gitu ya. And the third and the fourth dimension, I believe that in Indonesia, a lot of us sebelumnya belum begitu fokus on the assessment for traits and drivers. So, what is the definition of traits? Traits is actually a kind of raw material to develop competencies. So, for example, in sales position gitu ya, di sales itu kita membutuhkan orang yang need for achievement-nya cukup tinggi gitu, karena mereka akan deal with the daily target. And also, if we can compare with other position, for example, in back office, for example, accounting position, a profile that we need for accounting or administration staff is actually detail-oriented. So we can imagine that if our profile or our personality or our traits is not matched with the role gitu ya, but we have to spend at the minimum 8 hours in a day to do our job gitu ya, dan kebayang bagaimana kita harus bisa mengeluarkan a lot of effort to adapt with the job gitu ya. Nah, yang terakhir adalah drivers. Drivers ini kaitannya dengan company culture. Jadi drivers di sini kita biasanya sebut juga dengan motif seseorang atau penggerak atau yang biasanya menyebabkan orang tersebut merasa engaged and happy in the organization. For example, driversnya itu contohnya adalah challenging gitu ya. Jadi seseorang itu akan lebih tergerak ketika mereka menghadapi situasi-situasi yang penuh tantangan. Nah, contoh drivers lain itu adalah misalnya power gitu ya. Jadi seseorang akan lebih tergerak ketika mereka mendapatkan power di organisasi. Nah, kesesuaian antara drivers dan organization culture itu akan menyebabkan orang menjadi engaged dan menjadi satisfied in the organization yang pada akhirnya juga akan menyebabkan nilai dari turnover-nya itu menjadi kita bisa reduce. Nah, ini adalah 4 dimensi yang di Korn Ferry we believe that if we assess all of these 4 dimension, we can make sure that orang yang kita hire baik itu dari internal maupun dari eksternal, kita bisa pastikan human performance-nya itu jauh lebih optimal. Ya, next slide-nya, Pandya, mungkin kita punya poll ya after this ya. So if you can open the poll and then ya, dimensi apa yang biasanya di-assess in your organization for recruitment and selection? Ya, kompetensi is very popular in Indonesia ya. Banyak vendor kita juga di Indonesia yang memiliki banyak methodology to assess competencies. Okay, still moving. Ya, yeah. Done. Okay. Yeah. So this is the feedback ya from all of you. Ternyata kita untuk rekrutmen pegawai baru gitu ya, untuk rekrutmen dan selection kita memang banyak fokus terhadap kompetensinya dan experience yang kedua ya. Tetapi untuk drivers ternyata memang banyak yang belum fokus terhadap drivers itu ya. Tadi seperti yang I had mentioned before, drivers itu kaitannya erat dengan employee engagement dan kaitannya juga erat dengan turnover gitu ya. Apalagi nanti kalau kita mau menghadapi talent crunch, we have to make sure that all of the talent that we have in organization itu bisa feel satisfied, bisa engage with the organization, so we can reduce our turnover score. Oke, next. Nah, dari 4 dimensi tersebut, sebenarnya kita, apakah kita perlu mengakses keseluruhannya, atau kita sebenarnya atau sebenarnya sudah cukup untuk kita akses 1 atau 2 atau 3 dimension saja. Nah, itu balik lagi ke what kind of assessment objective that we have to make sure match with the purpose of the assessment gitu ya. For example ya, the first one is performance. Performance ini kita ingin melihat bagaimana seseorang bisa dinilai efektif in their current roles, gitu ya. Karena tadi sebelumnya kompetensi is related to the performance. Jadi kita bisa melihat dari kompetensinya aja. Apakah mereka sudah kompeten enough to do the job? Apakah mereka bisa menghasilkan performance pada saat itu juga? Dan yang kedua adalah potensial. Potensial ini kita sebenarnya mau melihat in the future roles yang lebih challenging gitu ya. Sehingga walaupun saat ini kompetensinya belum ada, tetapi mereka mempunyai raw material to be succeed in the future roles, which we can assess from traits, drivers, and experience. Yang ketiga adalah readiness. Readiness ini kita ingin melihat apakah seseorang tersebut bisa kita berikan job enlargement atau job enhancement gitu ya, sehingga kita bisa melihat dari sisi kompetensi dan experience-nya saja apakah mereka sudah mumpuni dan memiliki capability untuk kita berikan tugas-tugas tambahan. Dan yang terakhir ini adalah fit. Nah, fit ini sebenarnya paling cocok kalau misalnya kita mau melihat suatu posisi yang sifatnya critical to the organization, yang kita tidak bisa main-main. Ketika kita salah menempatkan orang, itu akan mengakibatkan impact terhadap organization performance secara langsung gitu ya. Sehingga kita perlu melihat keseluruhan empat dimension ini untuk memastikan bahwa orang tersebut tepat dalam mengisi critical position. Nah, dari perbedaan tujuan yang akan kita capai dalam melakukan assessment, dan kita juga percaya bahwa assessment tool saat ini banyak sekali ya, ada assessment center, ada BEI, ada psikometri gitu ya, dan kita bisa memilih berbagai macam assessment tools terhadap dimension apa yang akan kita assess. Nah, mungkin kita coba bisa masuk ke poll lagi gitu ya, untuk melihat bagaimana pendapat atau praktek yang dilakukan oleh Bapak Ibu semuanya di organisasi ketika melakukan assessment. Nah, biasanya ini pakai tools apa? Oke, karena kaitannya pemilihan antara assessment tools, ini juga sebenarnya cukup krusial ya untuk reliability and validity score. Oke. Assessment center is very popular in Indonesia. Ya. Oke, nah jadi yang pertama kita memang paling banyak menggunakan assessment center, kemudian menggunakan BEI, lalu menggunakan psychometric test. Oke, nah ini menarik ya. Sebenarnya setiap tools itu memberikan insight terhadap salah satu atau dua dimension saja gitu ya. For example, assessment center, if we use this assessment methodology, we actually can gather competencies information. Tapi kita tidak bisa menggunakan assessment center untuk melihat traits and driver gitu ya. And another example for psychometric test gitu ya. Psychometric test kita hanya bisa melihat bagaimana cognitive ability, bagaimana traits and driver-nya, tetapi kita tidak bisa melihat kompetensi orang. Nah, so we have to make sure that what kind of assessment tools that we use in the organization itu sebenarnya sesuai dengan dimension apa yang mau kita lihat di organisasi. Oke, next slide-nya. Ya, Ini ada quote yang menarik gitu ya. Ternyata fit for purpose is no longer good enough. Organization or leaders and leaders need to become fit for future. Nah, pertanyaannya adalah bagaimana kita bisa melihat gitu ya, apa sih yang dibutuhkan oleh semua pegawai dan semua kandidat gitu ya untuk memastikan bahwa mereka tidak hanya fit terhadap current roles, tetapi mereka juga fit for the futures gitu ya. For example, ini terjadi sebenarnya di hampir semua startup organization gitu ya. Mereka awalnya di-hire sebagai contoh di Scrum Master gitu. Tetapi seiring dengan perusahaan berkembang gitu ya, menjadi unicorn startup gitu, mereka tidak lagi, orang-orang yang existing di employee, mereka tidak lagi menjalankan role seperti mereka awalnya di-hire, tetapi mereka juga harus ikut sama organisasi. Mereka nanti kemudian akan dipromot atau mengalami job enlargement dan job enhancement. Nah, hal-hal demikian ini bagaimana kita bisa memastikan bahwa kandidat yang kita hire sekarang itu sebenarnya ready untuk bertumbuh bersama organisasi, dan bagaimana kita bisa memastikan current employee kita ini juga kita bisa stretch maksimal supaya mereka juga ready terhadap future needs. Nah, next slide-nya. Ya. Ini adalah situasi yang kita hadapi sekarang gitu ya, di mana memang banyak sekali disruption yang akhirnya berdampak terhadap organisasi. Yang pertama mengenai changing workforce gitu ya. This is actually related to the Tessa had mentioned before regarding virtual way of working gitu ya, dimana kita sekarang harus adapt dengan situasi bekerja di mana saja gitu ya, tidak lagi datang ke office, dan ini juga mengakibatkan skill set yang dibutuhkan untuk semua employee menjadi berubah, tidak lagi sama seperti dulu. Nah, yang kedua mengenai globalisasi. Globalisasi ini memberikan dampak terhadap kecepatan pergerakan maupun transfer gitu ya, terkait dengan people-nya atau produknya atau juga sebenarnya capital-nya gitu ya. Dan hal-hal ini menyebabkan bahwa organisasi tidak hanya compete terhadap local competitors, tapi sekarang juga kita compete dengan regional atau bahkan global competitors. Dan yang ketiga, kondisi kompetitornya juga sekarang ternyata sudah berbeda gitu ya. Mereka tidak lagi pasif, tetapi sekarang sudah banyak bermunculan kompetitor yang very aggressive in the market gitu. Nah, yang keempat adalah need for innovation. Kalau dulu kita kenal sebagai product driven gitu ya, atau tech driven gitu, teknologi driven organization. Jadi kita bisa mengatur market gitu sesuai dengan produk yang kita keluarkan atau sesuai dengan teknologi yang kita ciptakan. Tetapi saat ini sudah tidak berlaku lagi gitu ya. Sekarang yang berlaku adalah customer driven organization gitu, di mana kita sekarang semua disetir oleh customer needs and customer behavior, di mana kita semua harus adapt dengan segala macam inovasi yang kita keluarkan di organisasi supaya bisa compete in the market. Dan yang terakhir mengenai digitalization, ini juga sudah tidak bisa kita elakkan lagi gitu ya, ini sudah happen now gitu, dan ke semua hal ini juga mengakibatkan talent yang kita butuhkan sudah berbeda, dan kita juga mengalami shortage of skilled talent in the market gitu ya. So, pertanyaannya adalah, kalau begitu untuk memastikan bahwa fit for the future, apa saja yang perlu kita persiapkan? Nah, next slide-nya, ada 3 hal yang perlu kita tanyakan lagi gitu ya di organisasi ketika melakukan internal hiring or external hiring gitu. The first question is, who has capacity to be agile? Ini kita harus make sure ketika kita melakukan recruitment and selection for external atau kita melakukan assessment for internal. Dan second question adalah, who success in the digital world? Dan yang ketiga adalah mengenai VUCA environment gitu ya. Jadi 3 hal ini perlu kita lihat lagi ketika kita melakukan assessment, apakah memang kandidat yang kita hire atau kandidat yang kita promote atau kandidat yang kita rotate itu memiliki 3 hal ini. Nah, next slide-nya adalah mengenai jawabannya. So the answer is learning agility. So learning agility is actually very crucial, karena kita harus make sure our talent is fit for the future, not only for current purpose gitu ya. Definisinya adalah ability and willingness to learn from experience and subsequently apply that learning to perform successfully under. Nah, kata kuncinya adalah new or first time condition. Nah, apa yang kita assess tentang learning agility? Ada 5 hal sebenarnya. Yang pertama adalah result agility. Ini bagaimana kandidat bisa menghasilkan performance atau memberikan result dalam situasi yang baru pertama kali dia hadapi. Yang kedua adalah self-awareness, ini mengenai pemahaman tentang our strength or weaknesses, supaya kita bisa lebih adapt terhadap situasi yang kita hadapi. Yang ketiga adalah kemampuan untuk menghasilkan solusi-solusi yang sifatnya unik dan unusual. Yang keempat adalah people agility. People agility ini adalah our ability to adapt with a very diverse type of people. Dan yang terakhir adalah change agility. Ini bagaimana kita bisa comfortable dengan semua perubahan yang kita hadapi. Nah, 5 hal ini adalah yang perlu kita make sure dan kita assess ketika kita melakukan internal hiring atau external hiring. Next page-nya, jadi kesimpulannya adalah 4 dimensi ini sekarang sudah tidak lagi mencukupi gitu, tetapi kita harus menambahkan satu aspek mengenai learning agility. So I will close this presentation with a very good quote: "Hiring and assess with impact requires more than just good instinct." Okay, thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Kartika. Okay, we are already like 10 minutes past our initial time of 1 hour. Allow me to summarize everything of what we have presented. When it comes to pay, something that I can highlight is there's an element of optimism in the Indonesian market. People still want to pay. Some questions asked in the Q&A, what industries that want to pay bonus and increment? The answer is everybody wants to pay bonus and increment. From the result, 90% of them say that I will do that. So the directors are still skeptical about this. Then the key question is, as we move down to the job market, one critical question is that the way people look at jobs now will be slightly different. So it's not about, Tessa mentioned just now, it's moving away from pay 100% to an area where job security and everything else, flexibility becomes the anchor of it. So when you look at pay, you have to look at remuneration and as a whole, and not looking at be too rigid when it comes to pay. There's a lot more beyond that. What Kartika mentioned, knowing the nuances of what people want for their employees. There are certain, we have the K4D, we talks about trains, drivers, competencies and everything. Competencies and experience are typically those the areas that people would actually make an assessment. Back in the day, we always do that. But now with the pandemic going on, people are working from home. There's a lot of remote management that is happening. So there is a need to align or to synchronize the trades and drivers with the role. So now it becomes a lot more natural of people to work for a particular role. And it becomes a lot natural on that, right? So that's the need of the day. However, there's also a conversation around preparing people for the future. The critical traits over here that we are looking at is combining all the competencies, traits, drivers with learning agility. That is the tipping point. That would be the differentiator. How will whether this thing will go moving forward or it just being stagnant at the current time. So that's our takeaway and the key learning, key points that we can share throughout this webinar. Before I end this, thank you very much for those people who have logged in, signed on the things, and participate in the survey. If you have any questions, feel free to drop to the email in there. You can find me in LinkedIn or in my email address. Write to me directly. Those questions that we can't answer, I know there are certain questions on can we look at the results. All those things will be shared together with the deck. We'll send all the decks to you once we finish with this. Other than that, On behalf of my colleagues, the presenters, and those people who have been working behind the scene to make this a success, thank you very much. See you again in our next webinar, and until then, Happy New Year and stay safe. Thanks.